Hello everybody and welcome to Jazz Practice Process. I'm JQ and today I'm continuing to delve into the world of diatonic patterns. All right, so this is part 2 of the Diatonic Patterns series. In the first one, we just started to get more familiar with major scale patterns and we played scales in thirds just to change it up a little bit from the major scale by itself. And then we also played a couple of triads on each note of the scale using only notes from the scale. So that's basically the idea behind diatonic patterns is we're picking one scale and we are playing different patterns within that scale. So we're sort of building a cell, if you will, on each note of the scale, and then we're continuing up and down the scale, playing each of those sets of notes as we do so. So when we play a scale in thirds, we're just doing a two-note pattern starting on each note of the scale. When we do triads, it could be considered a three-note pattern. So today we're going to get into four-note patterns and just the most basic one, 1, 3, 5, 7, right? We're just creating seventh chords basically on each note of the scale. Now that may seem super basic, and for highly advanced players it is one of the basics, and so it's worth getting together if you haven't already. Now what this will do is it'll get you so familiar with a key because you're playing the seventh chords of that key up and down. So you'll know viscerally what each of the 7 chords are that make up the native chords in a key. And it's great to be as familiar as possible with every key. So the idea is that you do this, practice this in every key, and you build up a high level of familiarity with each key through doing so. So the basic form of this pattern is, like I said, 1, 3, 5, 7, and what you're going to do if we take the key of C major, it basically just sounds like this. Now when you play this sort of pattern, and any diatonic pattern, I should say, it's great to start at the lowest range in your instrument that you can and go up as high as you're comfortable, because you're going to want to be able to play in this key in any range on your instrument. So in practice, I might actually start down here because that's my low G on the trumpet. And if I'm playing in my key of C, which is concert B flat, then I would start at the lowest note that's in that key, right? So G. And so on. And then I'd go up as high as I feel like I can, and then I'd come back down. So that's our first pattern, all right? I recommend you do it in every key. And that took me quite some time to get familiar with all of those in every key. The first variation, you could call it, on this pattern is just reversing it, right? It's the descending way to play this. So basically I'm just going to do, instead of 1, 3, 5, 7, I'm going to go 7, 3, 5, 1, right? So if I start low on my instrument and go up high and back down, it's going to sound like this. And then I could come back down as well. All right, so now with these two patterns, we can actually do a bunch of different things. We can start to mix and match them, right? For example, just alternating the up version and the down version. So alternating 1, 3, 5, 7, and then 7, 3, 5, 1 on the next note of the scale, and then 1, 3, 5, 7, 7, 3, 5, 1. So here's what it sounds like. I'm just going to start on my root so that you can hear it better. Then I can come back down. Now it's important when you do an exercise like this where you're doing one pattern on one, starting on one note, and a different pattern on the next note, And back to the first, that you switch it and you start the first note with the second pattern as well, so that you're making sure and cover all the notes on all the patterns. Okay, so to do that, I would now start my scale with the 7-3-5-1 version. So already we have a couple different options you can get creative with. Now you could take this further and you could start mixing and matching these in more ways. For example, 2 ups and 1 down, like this. Or other combinations, right? This is kind of the first set of exercises that are really great to do, and I highly recommend that everybody get really familiar with every key by doing this. Now, the next set of variations that I'm going to talk about still use 1, 3, 5, 7, or I should say still use 1, 3, 5, and 7, but in a different order, right? So we're going to work with inversions of 7th chords. Now, if you know anything about music theory, you'll know that an inversion of a chord is basically the same chord played with a different note on top and on the bottom, you could say. So for 7th chords, we have 4 possible inversions, right? We have root position, which is what I have been working with in the first version of the exercise. Then if we take the bottom note, which is the root, we put it on top, then we have the first inversion, right? So I could work with the first inversion and do something like this. And so on. Second inversion is going to be if we take the first inversion, which has the third on the bottom and the root on top, we take that third and we put it on top, right? So now we have 5th on the bottom, 7th, root, 3rd. Right? So in each of these cases, you have this different shape of notes that's moving up and down the scale. Now the last inversion is our 3rd inversion, where we've got now the 7th on the bottom, and then the root, and then the 3rd, and then the 5th on top. Starting to introduce all of these different variations can be pretty overwhelming, because you start to think, do I really want to just sit and practice like a million possibilities? Because obviously with each of these inversions, we can ascend and descend, we can mix and match, we can start mixing and matching the inversions with each other, and it just gets to be a lot. So the key at this point is to start checking out what all the possibilities are, and then just picking one that resonates with you. So it's your improvisational sound that you're developing by practicing these things, and so you want it to reflect what you like the sound of. That's the whole point of playing jazz, right? Is to express what you like to hear. And so practicing is that process of finding those things and getting to know what they are. So let's say I don't really like most of the inversions, although maybe I like the last one, the 3rd inversion of these 7th chords. So maybe I'll take that and start to practice some more variations on it, right? And so on. So you have to find for yourself what you want to delve deeper into. And I find that it's much more useful to just pick a single thing and really work on it until you can play it really well, really quickly, with style and articulation, until it becomes second nature. So instead of practicing a million different possibilities once so that you don't actually really gain any benefit from it, focusing just on one single thing, maybe for a week, maybe for a month, really just narrowing your focus. I can't emphasize enough how important that is. So if you haven't learned, for example, just these root position ones that I introduced at the beginning of the video, just spend a bunch of time doing that. Don't worry about all these other options, and definitely don't let them overwhelm you, right? Okay, so if you, with all of these patterns, something else that you want to pay attention to is how you align the rhythm in your head, right? Because the way that I've been playing these, it's been all four notes have just been starting on the downbeat. So it's been 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4 and if you're counting in 4/4. So, but with each, say, if we're working with sets of 4 notes, you have 4 different possibilities for the part of the beat or the part of the measure that you can start on. The first note could be the downbeat, or the second note could be the downbeat. So putting the second note on the downbeat could be an interesting way to practice, for example, the third inversion of the 7th chords that I was playing at. So instead of 1 and 2 and, then I'm going to play and 1 and 2, right, for each one. We could also play it where the third note of this 4-note pattern is on the downbeat, da 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 da, right? And of course, the fourth way is to have the last of your 4-note pattern be the downbeat. So this is actually a pretty interesting one that I use quite often. They're all useful though. And when you are exploring the different patterns that you can adopt into your own playing, it's really good to make sure that you check out the different rhythmic possibilities with each one before you sort of move on thinking, oh, I don't really like the way that sounds, because each pattern sounds really different when you offset it rhythmically like this. So I really like putting the downbeat on the last note of patterns that are ascending, like the first one we did, just the 1 3 5 7, because then each note is sort of leading up to this downbeat, da 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 da, and then you really feel like those highest notes are really going somewhere, and you hear a melody in those as well. So here sort of sounds like. So yet another thing that we can do with just these 4 notes, 1 3 5 and 7, is play them in different permutations, so different order. Now there are 24 possible permutations, in case you want to geek out like I have, clearly. It's interesting to find what they all are and explore the possibilities of some of them, because some of them, I don't really resonate with, but some of them I find really interesting, and out of 24 different possibilities, you'll probably find one that you really like. So again, explore, find one, but then just hone it. Hone it and own it. Practice it until you can just nail it. And once you've picked one, don't worry about the other 23. Just focus on that one pattern. Get to where you can play it very quickly in any key effortlessly, right? That's what we want to do with all of these patterns, any pattern that you practice. That's where you want it to get. And that probably should be 80% of all of your practice time should just be working on the things that you are trying to incorporate into your improvising, into your musical vocabulary, and getting them in there. Okay? So go practice. All right? If you'd like to get a PDF for free of all the exercises and patterns that I've mentioned here and the concepts, then all you have to do is subscribe below and you'll receive that right away. So if you found this useful, then check that out, and happy practicing. Hope to see you soon. Thanks.